The day the Vectari came, humanity learned it was not alone in the universe. It was not the gentle first contact scientists had dreamed of. There were no radio signals decoded over decades, no careful diplomatic overtures, no slow building of understanding between species separated by the cosmic void. The Vectari arrived with a fleet of 17,000 warships that blotted out the sun over every major city on Earth simultaneously. Admiral Chen Wei stood on the observation deck of the USS Theodore Roosevelt, watching the massive shadow creep across the Pacific Ocean. The carrier group had been conducting routine exercises when the first reports came in. Now, every ship in the fleet sat motionless, their weapon systems rendered inert by some invisible force that hummed through every electronic system aboard. "They've disabled everything," Commander Sarah Mitchell said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Weapons, communications, navigation. We're dead in the water." Chen nodded slowly, his weathered hands gripping the railing. 53 years he had served his country. He had seen wars, peacekeeping missions, natural disasters, and humanitarian crises. Nothing had prepared him for this moment, the moment when humanity realized just how small it truly was. Above them, one of the alien vessels descended. It was enormous, easily 5 kilometers long, its surface a seamless expanse of midnight blue material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange symbols pulsed along its hull in patterns that hurt the eyes if stared at too long. "What do we do, Admiral?" Mitchell asked. Chen turned to face his crew, these men and women who had trusted him with their lives. He saw fear in their eyes, yes, but also something else: defiance, hope, the stubborn refusal to surrender that had carried humanity through ice ages and plagues and wars that had nearly consumed the world. "We stand," he said simply. "Whatever comes next, we stand." The Vectari broadcast their message to every screen, every speaker, every device capable of receiving a signal on the entire planet. It came in every human language simultaneously, a demonstration of technological superiority that made even the most advanced human computers seem like children's toys. "Species of the third planet," the voice intoned. "It was neither male nor female, neither warm nor cold. It simply was. A declaration of absolute authority that brooked no argument. You have been observed. You have been measured. You have been judged." In homes and offices, in bunkers and palaces, in crowded cities and remote villages, 7 billion human beings stopped what they were doing and listened. "Your species has shown concerning tendencies, violence, aggression, a capacity for destruction that exceeds your apparent level of development. The Vectari Dominion has deliberated on your fate for what you would measure as 3 of your centuries." 3 centuries. The weight of those words settled over humanity like a burial shroud. They had been watching. All this time, as humanity crawled from caves to cities, from swords to satellites, something out there had been watching and waiting. "The judgment of the Dominion is thus: you are to be contained. Your expansion beyond this system is forbidden. Your development of weapons capable of threatening Dominion space is forbidden. Violation of these edicts will result in immediate and total extinction." The message paused, and for a moment, hope flickered. Perhaps this was it. Perhaps they were simply being quarantined, left alone to continue their existence under the watchful eyes of their cosmic overlords. Then the voice continued. However, the Dominion requires resources. Your planet possesses materials of value. Your species possesses labor potential. In 10 of your years, a harvest fleet will arrive. At that time, you will provide the following: 60% of your refined metals, 40% of your agricultural output, 20 million specimens for labor allocation. 20 million people. The number hung in the air, obscene in its casualness. This is not a negotiation. This is not a request. This is the will of the Dominion. You have been granted 10 years to prepare for compliance. Use this time wisely. The alternative is extinction. The transmission ended. The silence that followed was deafening. 3 days after the Victari departure, the leaders of every nation on Earth gathered in Geneva. It was the largest assembly of world powers in human history, and for the first time, there were no empty seats, no boycotts, no political posturing. The threat they faced transcended borders, ideologies, and ancient hatreds. President Michael Torres of the United States stood at the podium, looking out over the assembled leaders. His counterparts from China, Russia, the European Union, India, Brazil, and dozens of other nations looked back at him with expressions ranging from despair to barely contained rage. 10 years, Torres began. That's what they gave us. 10 years to accept slavery or face annihilation. He paused, letting the words sink in. I don't know about the rest of you, but I have no intention of doing either. A murmur rippled through the assembly. Premier Jiang Weiming of China leaned forward, his eyes sharp despite his advanced age. What you're suggesting is suicide, Jiang said. You saw what they could do. They disabled every military system on the planet with a thought. Our most advanced weapons would be toys to them. Today, yes, Torres agreed, but 10 years is a long time. 10 years ago, smartphones were primitive compared to what we have now. 20 years ago, the internet was barely a fraction of what it has become. Humanity has proven time and again that we can achieve the impossible when our backs are against the wall. Russian President Dmitry Volkov stood, his broad frame casting a shadow over the nearby delegates. I have my disagreements with the American president, he said, his deep voice rumbling through the chamber. Many disagreements. But on this we are united. Russia will not kneel. We will not offer our people as slaves to alien masters. One by one, other leaders rose to speak. Prime Minister Yuki Tanaka of Japan spoke of her grandfather's stories of rebuilding after the war, of rising from ashes to become a technological powerhouse. Chancellor Lucas Weber of Germany invoked the spirit of reunification, of a people who had torn down walls and rebuilt their nation. Prime Minister Amara Okonkwo of the African Union reminded the assembly of centuries of resistance against colonial powers, of the indomitable spirit that had eventually thrown off the chains of oppression. By the end of the session, something unprecedented had occurred. Every nation represented had voted to unite under a single banner, the United Earth Defense Initiative. For the first time in human history, there would be no borders when it came to defense, no secrets, no competition. Every resource, every scientist, every soldier, every factory would be dedicated to a single purpose: survival. Dr. Elena Vasquez had spent her career studying theoretical physics, publishing papers on concepts that most of her colleagues considered pure fantasy: faster than light travel, zero-point energy, quantum tunneling on a macro scale. The journal reviewers had called her ideas creative but impractical. Her grant applications had been rejected more times than she cared to count.
Now she stood in the largest laboratory complex ever constructed, built in record time in the deserts of Nevada, with a staff of 10,000 engineers, physicists, and technicians at her command, and a budget that made the entire GDP of some nations look like pocket change.
"The Vectari drive systems," she said, pointing to the holographic display that floated above the conference table, "operate on principles we've theorized but never been able to test. Based on the energy readings we captured during their arrival, they're manipulating space-time itself, creating localized distortions that allow their vessels to effectively sidestep the light-speed barrier." General Thomas Burke, the military liaison assigned to her project, frowned at the display. "Can we do it?"
Elena smiled, and there was something fierce in that expression. "General, 3 months ago, I would have said it was impossible. But the Vectari made a mistake. When they disabled our systems, they had to interface with our technology. That interface left traces, quantum signatures, that gave us more information about their capabilities than they probably intended."
She pulled up another display, this one showing complex mathematical equations that made Burke's head hurt just looking at them. "They're not gods," Elena continued. "Their technology is advanced, yes, centuries ahead of ours, perhaps millennia. But it operates on the same fundamental physical laws that govern our universe. If they can do it, so can we." "How long?" Elena's smile faded slightly. "If we had unlimited resources and no interference, maybe 50 years. But we don't have 50 years. We have 10. She took a deep breath. "So we're going to have to be creative." In shipyards around the world, work continued around the clock. The designs being built weren't like anything humanity had created before. Gone were the sleek, streamlined shapes of aircraft carriers and submarines. In their place rose angular, brutal vessels, bristling with weapon systems that hadn't existed 18 months ago. Captain James Okonkwo, no relation to the African Union Prime Minister, though the shared name had led to more than a few awkward conversations, walked the deck of the UES Defiance, the first of the new Sentinel-class battlecruisers. At 800 meters long, it dwarfed any vessel humanity had ever built. Its hull was constructed from a revolutionary new alloy that the material science teams had developed by studying the fragments of Vectari technology that had been recovered from various crash sites over the decades, crashes that governments had denied and covered up for generations. "She's beautiful," his first officer, Commander Yuki Sato, said, falling into step beside him. "She's a weapon of war," Okonkwo replied. "Beauty isn't the point." "Can't she be both?" Okonkwo considered this for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I suppose she can. How are the crew assignments coming?" "Volunteers are still flooding in. We have more applicants than positions by a factor of 50. Sato's voice carried a note of wonder. "People are willing to die for this, Captain. They're leaving their families, their careers, everything, for a chance to fight." "Let's hope it doesn't come to dying," Okonkwo said. "But if it does, we'll make sure it means something." Not all of humanity's preparations were visible. Beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a complex that had been excavated in secret over 6 years, Dr. Marcus Chen led a team of geneticists, neurologists, and bioengineers in work that would have been considered science fiction a decade ago and controversial beyond measure. "The Vectari have millennia of evolution on us," Chen explained to the newly arrived team members, gathered in the sterile briefing room a kilometer below the surface. "Their neural architecture is designed for their technology, their society, their way of thinking. If we try to match them on their terms, we lose, so we're not going to play by their terms." He pulled up a holographic display showing a human brain, its neural pathways highlighted in luminous blue. Project Prometheus isn't about making humans stronger or faster, though those will be side effects. It's about fundamentally upgrading the human operating system. Enhanced processing speed, parallel thinking, direct neural interface with our new technology. The volunteers who complete this program won't just be soldiers, they'll be a new kind of human.
A young scientist raised her hand. The ethical implications
Were debated exhaustively before this project was approved, Chen interrupted, not unkindly. Every volunteer knows the risks. Every volunteer has chosen to accept them. They're not doing this for glory or power. They're doing it because they understand that survival sometimes requires sacrifice. He looked around the room, meeting each pair of eyes in turn. Make no mistake. What we're doing here will change humanity forever. There's no going back from this. But the alternative is extinction. And I, for one, believe that the human race is worth any price to preserve. In the 7 years since the Vectari ultimatum, humanity had changed in ways both visible and invisible. The petty conflicts that had defined nations for centuries seemed laughably trivial now. Resources flowed freely across former borders. Scientists who had once competed for grants now shared data in real time across a global research network. Military leaders who had trained their entire careers to fight each other now planned side by side in the unified Earth Defense Command. The changes weren't always smooth. There were protests, resistance movements, people who argued that fighting was futile and that humanity should simply accept its fate. Religious movements sprang up, some calling the Vectari divine punishment, others heralding them as the fulfillment of prophecy. In some corners of the world, chaos reigned as governments struggled to maintain order while simultaneously redirecting their entire economies toward the war effort. But by and large, humanity rose to the challenge. Children learned about alien threats in schools designed to foster innovation and resilience. Manufacturing shifted from consumer goods to weapons, ships, and defensive systems. Agricultural programs were revolutionized, focused on efficiency and sustainability rather than profit. Medical research prioritized longevity and enhancement, pushing the boundaries of what the human body could endure. And in secret, in laboratories and training facilities hidden from satellite view, the first of the Prometheus volunteers completed their transformations. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, daughter of Marcus Chen, though she had earned her place in the program on her own merits, opened her eyes for the first time since the procedure. The world was different now. She could see electromagnetic fields, hear the hum of power lines through walls, feel the subtle vibrations of footsteps from 100 meters away. When she thought about accessing the facility's computer systems, her neural implants responded instantly, flooding her consciousness with data that she absorbed without effort. "How do you feel?" her father asked, his voice carrying a mixture of professional curiosity and paternal concern. Sarah flexed her hands, marveling at the enhanced strength that hummed through her muscles. "I feel ready," she said. "I feel like we might actually have a chance." The final year arrived like a thundercrack across a quiet sky. Around the world, preparations that had been hidden in shadow moved into the light. Military parades showcased vessels that had never been seen before, fighters that moved with impossible speed and agility, ground vehicles that seemed to phase in and out of reality as their experimental stealth systems flickered. The message was clear. Humanity would not go quietly. In the Vectari Dominion's message center, a minor functionary named Crix reviewed the latest surveillance data from the human homeworld and felt an unfamiliar emotion stirring in its secondary brain. Concern. "Advisor," Crix said, approaching its superior with the hesitation of one who knows they are about to deliver unwelcome news. "The humans have changed." Advisor Teth, who had been responsible for Earth's containment classification for 3 centuries, barely glanced up from the strategy display it was reviewing. Of course they have changed. We expected some development. That is why we granted them 10 years, rather than arriving immediately with the harvest fleet. Allowing primitive species time to prepare their offering reduces resistance and increases efficiency.
I understand, Advisor, but the scale of the change is unprecedented.
Now Teth looked up, its 3 primary eyes focusing on Crix with an intensity that made the junior functionary's circulatory system pulse faster.
Show me.
Crix transmitted the surveillance data directly to the advisor's neural interface. For a long moment, Teth was silent, processing information that contradicted 3 centuries of careful analysis and planning.
This is impossible, Teth finally said. No species has ever advanced this rapidly. Not even the Vectari during our own expansion period achieved developmental acceleration at this rate.
There's more, Advisor. Their transmissions, they're no longer unencrypted. Our linguistic analysis systems cannot penetrate their new communication protocols, and their shipyards. Crix paused, summoning the courage to continue. They have constructed a fleet.
How many vessels?
Based on energy signature analysis, approximately 48,000. Teth's secondary brain, the one responsible for emotional processing, began to generate something the advisor had not experienced in centuries: doubt. "Alert the Dominion High Council," Teth ordered. "We may require additional resources for the harvest." On Earth, President Maria González Torres had died of a heart attack in the 7th year, having given everything he had to the effort, addressed humanity in what would be their last unified broadcast before the Vectari return. 10 years ago, we stood in the shadow of beings who saw us as nothing more than resources to be harvested. They gave us a decade, believing we would use that time to prepare for submission. They were right about one thing: we did prepare, but not for submission. The broadcast showed images of the Sentinel fleet, now fully operational, its vessels spread across Earth's orbit in formations designed by the greatest military minds in human history, enhanced by the analytical capabilities of the Prometheus volunteers. They called us a violent species. They called us aggressive. They called us dangerous. Gonzalez's voice hardened. They had no idea how right they were. The image shifted to show the faces of the fleet commanders, the scientists, the soldiers, the millions who had dedicated the last decade to this moment. To the Vectari Dominion, you thought you were dealing with primitives. You thought you could simply take what you wanted and move on. You were wrong. Every man, woman, and child on this planet stands ready to fight. We may fall, but if we do, we will ensure that you never forget the price of your arrogance. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of 7 billion souls standing as one. You wanted a harvest? You'll reap exactly what you've sown. The Vectari harvest fleet arrived precisely on schedule, dropping out of faster-than-light transit at the edge of Earth's solar system. Harvester Commander Veth, who had overseen the subjugation of 17 species over its long career, reviewed the tactical display with what its species might call confidence. "Standard approach pattern," Veth ordered. "Prepare the compliance signal. Once they understand that resistance is futile, the harvest can proceed efficiently." The fleet, 12,000 vessels, more than sufficient for a primitive species, began its approach toward the inner system. Energy fields hummed with power. Weapon systems charged in case any token resistance needed to be crushed,
and harvest bays prepared to receive the promised tribute. Veth watched the tactical display, waiting for the primitive electromagnetic signals that would indicate humanity's surrender broadcast. What came instead was something entirely different. "Commander," the sensor operator said, its voice carrying a note of uncertainty that Veth had never heard before, "we are detecting vessels." "The primitives have vessels. We expected this. They were already capable of limited space travel when we first made contact." "These are not the same vessels, Commander. They are—" The sensor operator paused, recalibrating its instruments. "They are approaching at speeds that should not be possible for their technology level. And there are many of them." Veth turned to the main display as the human fleet came into visual range. The sight that greeted the Harvester commander defied everything the Dominion knew about developmental timelines, about technological advancement, about the limitations of primitive species. The ships were not crude assemblages of metal and chemical propulsion. They were sleek, angular vessels that moved with a fluid grace, suggesting mastery of physics that should have been centuries beyond human capability. They were armed with weapons that radiated energy signatures the Dominion had never encountered before. And there were so many of them. 48,000 vessels confirmed, the sensor operator reported, its voice now trembling. "Additional contacts emerging from behind the system's gas giants. The count is now 62,000. Veth felt its secondary brain flooding with chemicals it had never produced before. Adrenaline analogs, fear hormones, combat preparation substances that had lain dormant for generations. "This is impossible," Veth whispered. 10 years! It has only been 10 years! The communication system crackled, and a human voice filled the bridge. Not the pleading, submissive tones the Dominion had heard from so many conquered species, but something hard, cold, and utterly without fear. "Vektari Harvest Fleet, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. You stand in violation of human space. You have 30 seconds to reverse course and return to your point of origin. This is your only warning." Veth's primary brain struggled to process the situation. This was not how harvests proceeded. This was not how primitive species behaved. This was— "Commander, they're charging weapons," the tactical officer reported. "Impossible. They cannot have weapons capable of threatening our shields. This is a bluff. Continue the approach and prepare the compliance signal." "Time's up," Sarah Chen's voice said. The first volley from the human fleet struck the Vektari formation like the wrath of an angry god. The weapons humanity had developed over 10 years of desperate, focused innovation operated on principles the Vektari had never conceived. Coherent graviton projectors that disrupted the fundamental structure of matter. Quantum-locked missiles that phased through energy shields as if they weren't there. Electromagnetic pulse cannons that delivered not radiation, but carefully crafted information packets designed to corrupt alien computer systems. The first wave of fire ripped through 300 Vektari vessels before their commanders could even issue evasive orders. Harvester Commander Veth stared at the tactical display as ship after ship winked out of existence. "Return fire! All vessels, return fire!" The Vektari responded with weapons that had subjugated 100 worlds, plasma lances, gravity bombs, neural disruption beams. Weapons that had turned advanced civilizations into scattered colonies of survivors. Weapons that had never failed to break any species the Dominion had encountered. The human vessels dodged with impossible agility.
their movements coordinated by the enhanced consciousness of Prometheus commanders who processed tactical data at speeds that made traditional combat computers seem glacial. Those few shots that connected were absorbed by energy shields that flickered with strange, multi-dimensional patterns. Shields reverse-engineered from the Vectari's own technology and then improved upon with human innovation. "This is impossible!" Veth screamed, watching its fleet diminish by the minute. "They cannot have achieved this level of advancement in 10 years! They cannot!" "Commander," the communication officer interrupted, "we are receiving a transmission from the human flagship." Admiral Sarah Chen's face appeared on the view screen. She was young by human standards, barely 30, but her eyes carried the weight of a species that had spent 10 years preparing for this exact moment. "You're wondering how we did it," she said, as if reading Veth's mind. "How we could have possibly advanced so far in such a short time. The answer is simple, Harvester Commander. You underestimated us. Your mistake was assuming that your developmental timeline was universal, that all species progress at the same rate, that we would sit passively and wait for extinction." On the tactical display, another wave of Vectari ships fell to human weapons. "Humanity doesn't work like that. When our backs are against the wall, when we face annihilation, when there is no hope, that is when we are at our most dangerous. You gave us 10 years to prepare. 10 years of every resource, every mind, every ounce of determination focused on a single goal. And you have no idea what we're capable of when we're united." Veth's fleet had lost 4,000 vessels. The humans had lost less than 200. "I suggest you withdraw," Chen continued. "Return to your dominion and deliver a message. Earth is no longer a target. Earth is a threat. Come at us again, and we will not stop at defense. We will find your homeworld, and we will ensure that the Vectari Dominion never threatens anyone ever again." For the first time in its long career, Veth experienced something completely foreign to Vectari consciousness, the urge to flee. "This is not over," Veth hissed. "The Dominion has resources beyond your comprehension. When we return—" "If you return," Chen interrupted, "you will find that we have not been idle. 10 years ago, we had nothing. Now we have a fleet. Imagine what we will have in another 10 years, another 50, another 100. Her smile was cold, predatory. "You gave us time, Harvester Commander. You gave us the greatest gift you could have possibly given us, and we used it well." The remaining Vectari ships began to break formation, accelerating toward the outer system and the safety of faster-than-light transit. Veth watched them go, knowing that pursuit was futile, knowing that the harvest mission had failed utterly and completely. "This isn't over," Veth repeated, but even to its own ears, the words sounded hollow. The Vectari Dominion High Council had not convened an emergency session in 3,000 years. The last time had been during the Korath Rebellion, when a species they had considered thoroughly subjugated had risen up and destroyed an entire sector fleet. That rebellion had been crushed, the Korath reduced to a handful of survivors scattered across remote outposts, their homeworld rendered uninhabitable as a lesson to others. But the Korath had taken centuries to develop their resistance. The Korath had been given resources and technology by sympathetic species within the Dominion's borders. The Korath had not faced the full might of a prepared harvest fleet. The humans had done something else entirely. "The surveillance data is clear," Advisor Teth reported to the assembled council members, its voice carrying the weight of failure and fear. In 10 standard years, the humans achieved technological advancement that should have required centuries. Their fleet now matches our own in both capability and numbers. Their weapons are, in some respects, superior to anything in our arsenal. Council Prime Voth, the eldest and most powerful of the Vectari leadership, listened in silence. Its ancient body was supported by medical systems that had kept it alive for 12,000 years, systems that had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations, the subjugation of hundreds of species, the expansion of the dominion across a quarter of the galaxy. Never, in all those millennia, had Voth felt fear like this. "How?" Voth asked, the single word cutting through the chamber like a blade. "We do not know, Council Prime. Our analysts have studied every piece of data we possess. The human developmental acceleration defies all known models. It is as if their species exists in a different temporal framework than the rest of the galaxy." Or, another council member interjected, as if they have access to resources and knowledge that we are unaware of. Silence fell as the implications of that statement sank in. The Dominion had believed itself alone at the apex of galactic civilization. It had encountered other advanced species, yes, but all had either been conquered or had agreed to treaties of non-interference. The idea that some unknown power might be assisting humanity was troubling in ways that transcended the immediate crisis. "We must respond," yet another council member said. "If we allow this defiance to stand, other subjugated species will be emboldened. The entire framework of the Dominion will be threatened." "And how do you propose we respond?" Voth asked. "We have already committed a significant portion of our military resources to the human theater. They destroyed over half of our harvest fleet in a single engagement. A larger fleet would require stripping defenses from other sectors, inviting exactly the kind of rebellion you fear." The council chamber fell into troubled silence. For 3,000 years, the Dominion had operated from a position of absolute superiority. Every problem had been solved through the application of overwhelming force. Now, for the first time, they faced an enemy that could not simply be crushed. "Perhaps," Teth ventured, "negotiation is the answer. The humans spoke of becoming a threat to the Dominion, but they did not pursue our retreating vessels. They may be willing to accept a position of neutrality, a mutual agreement of non-interference." Negotiate? The word seemed to physically pain several council members. With a species we intended to harvest? The Dominion does not negotiate with inferior beings. We never have. "And yet," Voth said slowly, "the humans are no longer inferior beings, are they? They have proven themselves capable of matching our technology, our military might, our strategic planning. If they are no longer inferior, then the rules we have applied to inferior species may no longer be appropriate." Council Prime Voth rose from its ancient throne, servos and medical systems whirring with the effort. Despite its age, despite its fear, there was still power in that ancient form, the accumulated wisdom of millennia of leadership. "We will send an envoy," Voth declared. "Not a harvester, not a conqueror, but a diplomat. We will learn what the humans want, what they will accept, and what they will not tolerate. And if negotiation fails—" Voth's 3 primary eyes swept across the chamber, meeting the gaze of each council member in turn. "Then we will prepare for a war unlike anything the Dominion has faced in its entire history. Because make no mistake, If the humans can achieve this level of advancement in 10 years, they will only become more dangerous with time. We may have already missed our opportunity to stop them. We may be witnessing the rise of a species that will one day threaten our very existence." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. "The humans have a saying," Voth continued. "Those who study their culture have found it repeated throughout their history, in different languages and different contexts, but always with the same meaning. What doesn't kill me makes me stronger. We attempted to subjugate them, and we failed. We gave them a decade of time and a reason to unite. We may have created the very thing we feared." 1 year after the Battle of Earth, as it came to be known in human historical texts, Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the UES Horizon, the newest and most advanced vessel in the human fleet. Below her, Earth turned slowly in the void, its surface now dotted with space elevators and orbital platforms that had not existed a decade ago. "The Vektari envoy has arrived," Commander Yuki Sato reported, falling into step beside her. "They're requesting permission to approach." "Grant it," Chen said. "Escort them to the diplomatic station. And Yuki?"
"Yes, Admiral?"
"Make sure they see everything on the way. Every ship, every station, every weapon. Let them understand exactly what they're dealing with." Sato nodded, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "With pleasure, Admiral." As her second-in-command departed, Chen remained at the viewport, watching the stars that had once seemed so distant and unreachable. In 10 years, humanity had gone from a species confined to a single planet to a spacefaring civilization that had repelled an alien invasion. In 10 years, they had united, transformed, and risen to meet a challenge that should have been insurmountable. And they were only getting started. The Prometheus program had expanded beyond its original military applications. Enhanced humans now worked in research facilities, in exploration vessels, in the orbital factories that produced the technology humanity needed to secure its future. The global unity that had been forged in the face of extinction had proven more durable than anyone had expected. Old conflicts, old hatreds, old divisions seemed almost quaint in the face of a universe filled with potential threats and potential opportunities. Chen's neural implants pinged with an incoming message. She accepted it, and her mother's face appeared in her mind's eye. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now director of the United Earth Research Initiative and still pushing the boundaries of known physics. "Sarah, I wanted you to be the first to know. We've cracked it." "Cracked what?" "Faster than light communication. Not just travel, communication. We can now send messages instantaneously across any distance. The implications—" Elena paused, seemingly overwhelmed by her own discovery. "Sarah, we're going to change everything. Again." Chen felt a smile spreading across her face. "You always did like to show off, Mom." "I learned from the best. How are the negotiations?" "About to begin. The Vektari seem genuinely scared. I think they're finally understanding what they've done." Elena was quiet for a moment. "You know, when this all started, I wondered if we would make it. I wondered if humanity had what it took to survive against an enemy so far beyond us. But now—" "Now?" "Now I realize that we were never as far behind as we thought. We just needed a reason to run, and they gave us the best reason possible." Chen nodded slowly. "They thought they were granting us time to prepare for slavery. Instead, they gave us time to prepare for war. They thought they were dealing with primitives. Instead, they awakened a species that had spent its entire existence fighting, struggling, evolving, and refusing to die. The Vektari have a lot to learn about humanity. They're about to get a very thorough education. The diplomatic station had been constructed in orbit around Earth's moon, a neutral location chosen specifically for these negotiations. The Vectari envoy, a small vessel carrying Ambassador Threx and a minimal support staff, docked at the designated bay under the watchful guns of 3 Sentinel-class battlecruisers. Ambassador Threx was unlike the military commanders who had previously represented the Dominion in its dealings with humanity. Older than Veth, older even than most of the High Council, Threx had spent millennia navigating the complex politics of the Dominion's inner circles. It had seen empires rise and fall, had witnessed the subjugation of countless species, and had always believed, until now, that the Dominion's way was the only way. Now, walking through the corridors of the human station, surrounded by technology that should not exist, escorted by beings who should not be possible, Threx felt the foundations of its worldview crumbling. "The humans we processed during our initial survey," Threx said to its aide, keeping its voice low. "They were primitive, fractured, warring among themselves over resources and ideologies. How could they have become this?" "The analysis teams have several theories," the aide responded. "The most prevalent is that human psychological development is fundamentally different from other species. Where most civilizations develop incrementally, with periods of stability and gradual advancement, humans appear to be capable of punctuated evolution, massive, rapid development in response to existential pressure." "Punctuated evolution," Threx repeated. "They adapt to survive." "More than that, Ambassador. They thrive on adversity. Our pressure did not break them, it unified them. It gave them a common enemy and a common purpose. We may have inadvertently accelerated their development by centuries." Threx absorbed this information as they approached the negotiation chamber. The doors opened to reveal a circular room, its walls transparent to the stars beyond. At the center of the room sat a single table, and at that table waited the human delegation. Admiral Sarah Chen sat at the head of the human side, flanked by representatives from the United Earth government and military. Her eyes, those strange human eyes that carried so much expression, tracked Threx's every movement as the ambassador approached. "Ambassador Threx," Chen said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber, "welcome to human space." "Admiral Chen." Threx settled into the chair provided, an uncomfortable fit for Vectari anatomy, though the ambassador suspected this was intentional. "I appreciate the reception, though I note that your escort vessels had their weapons trained on us throughout our approach." "A precaution. Your people did threaten us with extinction. Trust, I'm afraid, is in short supply." Threx inclined its head, acknowledging the point. "I am here to discuss the possibility of changing that." "Discuss, then." The ambassador activated a holographic display, projecting a star map that showed the vast expanse of Vectari-controlled space. It was an impressive demonstration, hundreds of systems, thousands of worlds, resources beyond counting. "The Dominion controls approximately 22% of the galaxy," Threx said. "We have done so for over 50,000 years. In that time, we have subjugated or eliminated hundreds of species. We have built the most powerful civilization in the known universe." "And yet here you are," Chen observed, "asking for peace." "The Council has recognized that humanity represents a unique case. Your species has exceeded expectations." Chen's smile was thin, cold. "Exceeded expectations. That's one way to put it. Here's another. You tried to enslave us, and we beat you. Badly." "Yes, you did." So what exactly is the Dominion offering? Threx deactivated the star map and leaned forward, a gesture of sincerity in Vectari body language. Recognition. The Dominion proposes a treaty recognizing human sovereignty over your solar system and any territories you choose to expand into within a designated zone. We propose an end to hostilities, an exchange of diplomatic envoys, and a commitment to peaceful coexistence. Generous. What does the Dominion want in return? A guarantee that humanity will not pursue aggressive action against Dominion territories, that you will not provide assistance to species currently under Dominion control, and that you will share certain technological advancements that we find interesting. Chen was quiet for a long moment, her enhanced mind processing the proposal, analyzing its implications, considering the dozens of possible responses and their likely outcomes. "Let me make something clear, Ambassador," she finally said. "We are not negotiating from a position of weakness. Your fleet is still recovering from our last encounter. Our intelligence suggests it will take you at least 50 years to rebuild to full strength. In that time, we will have expanded beyond anything you can currently imagine." Threx's secondary brain pulsed with alarm chemicals. "You have intelligence on the Dominion's internal affairs?" "We have many things the Dominion doesn't know about, Ambassador. That's rather the point." Chen stood, walking to the transparent wall and gazing out at the stars. "Here is what humanity wants. First, complete withdrawal from this sector. Any Dominion vessels entering the designated zone will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly. Second, the release of any human prisoners or specimens taken during your previous encounters with our species." Threx nodded cautiously. These demands were harsh, but not unreasonable. "Third," Chen continued, "information. Complete and unredacted data on all species currently under Dominion control, their locations, their numbers, their capabilities." "That is—" Threx stopped, processing the implications. "You want to contact them. We want to know who our neighbors are. What happens after that is not the Dominion's concern." The Ambassador's circulatory system pulsed faster. The Council had feared exactly this: humanity reaching out to subjugated species, providing aid, technology, hope. The entire structure of the Dominion could be threatened. "I cannot agree to that condition." "Then we have nothing further to discuss." Chen turned back to face Threx, her expression hardening. "Ambassador, let me be clear about something. The Dominion's time of absolute authority is coming to an end. Whether that end comes peacefully or violently is up to you, but it is coming." "Is that a threat?" "It's a prediction. 10 years ago, we were primitives, squabbling among ourselves, barely capable of reaching our own moon. Now we have a fleet that can match the Dominion's military might. 10 years from now, we will be even stronger. 50 years from now, 100 years. Do you see the pattern, Ambassador?" Threx saw it. The terrible, inescapable logic of exponential growth applied to a species that seemed to have no upper limit on its development. "The Dominion has existed for 50,000 years. We have endured because we have been the strongest. But strength can be matched and eventually exceeded." Chen nodded. "Exactly. So here's the choice I'm offering you. Work with us and the Dominion survives. Changed, perhaps, but surviving. The species you've subjugated will eventually be freed regardless. It can happen through war, with all the destruction that implies, or it can happen through negotiation, with the Dominion adapting to a new reality." You're asking us to dismantle our entire civilization. I'm asking you to evolve, to become something better than you are. That's what humanity did when you threatened us. We could have despaired. We could have surrendered. Instead, we changed ourselves, remade ourselves into something that could survive and thrive. If we can do it, so can you. Threx sat in silence for a long time, considering the future that Chen was describing. A galaxy without the Dominion's iron control. A galaxy of free species, interacting and trading and growing together. It was terrifying. And yet, somewhere deep in Threx's ancient consciousness, it was also appealing. "I will take your proposal to the Council," Threx finally said. "I cannot guarantee their response." "I know, but I hope they'll make the wise choice. War with humanity will not go well for the Dominion. We've proven that once. We'll prove it again if we have to." The Vektari High Council deliberated for 3 months. In that time, humanity did not rest. New ships slid from construction yards. New technologies emerged from research facilities. New enhanced humans completed their Prometheus training. The message was clear. Every day of delay made humanity stronger. Finally, the Council reached its decision. Council Prime Voth, ancient and weary and wise, addressed the assembled representatives via a quantum-linked transmission that reached every corner of the Dominion simultaneously. "For 50,000 years, we have ruled through strength. We have taken what we wanted, subjugated those who opposed us, and built an empire that spans the stars. We believed this was the natural order, the strong dominating the weak, the advanced controlling the primitive." The old leader paused, gathering strength for what came next. "We were wrong." A ripple of shock ran through the Dominion. Never in their history had a Council Prime admitted error. "The humans have shown us something we did not want to see. Strength is not measured only in weapons and fleets. It is measured in will, in determination, in the capacity to overcome any obstacle. By these measures, the humans are strong beyond anything we have encountered, and they have made us an offer, not of surrender, but of partnership, of a new way forward for all species." Voth's 3 primary eyes swept across the chamber, meeting the gaze of every council member. "The Council has voted. We will accept the human proposal. We will withdraw from their territory. We will release their prisoners. And we will provide them with the information they have requested regarding our subjugated populations." Murmurs of protest rose from some quarters, but Voth raised a manipulator appendage for silence. "I know this is difficult. I know it goes against everything we have believed for millennia. But the alternative is war with a species that becomes more powerful every day. War we would eventually lose. Is it not better to change now, willingly, than to be forced to change later through defeat?" The council chamber fell silent. No one had a response to that question. "We are entering a new era," Voth concluded. "The Dominion will not cease to exist, but it will transform. We will learn to lead through cooperation rather than conquest. We will build relationships with other species rather than subjugating them. It will not be easy, it will not be fast, but it is necessary." Council Prime Voth settled back into its ancient throne, exhausted but at peace. "The humans have a saying, 'The only constant is change.' Perhaps it is time we learned that lesson for ourselves." Epilogue, 100 years later. Ambassador Maya Chen, great-granddaughter of Sarah Chen and Marcus Chen, carrying the genetic legacy of both warriors and scientists, stood on the observation deck of the Galactic Assembly Station, watching vessels from 100 different species coming and going in the endless dance of commerce and diplomacy. 100 years had passed since the Battle of Earth. 100 years since humanity had proven itself capable of standing against the greatest power in the galaxy. In that time, the universe had changed beyond recognition. The Vectory Dominion still existed, but it was unrecognizable from the empire that had once threatened humanity with extinction. Former subject species now sat as equals in the Galactic Assembly, their representatives debating and voting and shaping the future of an entire galaxy. Trade routes that had once carried slaves and tribute now carried goods and ideas, flowing between worlds that had never dreamed of peaceful contact. And at the center of it all, humanity continued to grow. They had spread across 100 star systems, their numbers now measured in trillions. Their technology had advanced to levels that would have been inconceivable even to the Vectari of a century ago. But more importantly, they had learned from their own history, from their wars and mistakes, from the near extinction that had forced them to evolve. They had become something new, something better. Maya turned from the viewport as her aide approached. Ambassador, the Vectari delegation has arrived for the anniversary ceremony. Former Council Prime Voth's descendant is leading them. Voth's descendant, Maya mused. I remember my great-grandmother telling me about her negotiations with Ambassador Threx. She said the Vectari were terrified, but trying not to show it. And now? Maya smiled. Now they're our allies. Strange how things change. She made her way to the ceremony hall, where representatives from across the galaxy had gathered to commemorate the Battle of Earth, not as a celebration of victory, but as a reminder of what could be achieved when beings chose cooperation over conquest. As she took her place at the podium, Maya looked out over the assembly. Vectari and humans, Korath and dozens of other species, all united in a way that would have seemed impossible a century ago. 100 years ago, she began, my species faced extinction. An empire that had ruled for 50,000 years declared that we would be harvested, our resources taken, our people enslaved, our future erased. They gave us 10 years to prepare for submission. She paused, letting the weight of history settle over the audience. Instead, we prepared for war. We united as never before. We pushed the boundaries of science and technology beyond anything we had imagined possible. And when the Harvest Fleet arrived, we showed them that humanity would not go quietly. Images appeared on the displays around the hall, the Battle of Earth, the Vectari retreat, the negotiations that followed. But we are not here today to celebrate war. We are here to celebrate what came after, a galaxy that chose peace over endless conflict. Species that learned to see each other not as conquerors and conquered, but as neighbors and partners. An alliance built on the simple principle that every being deserves the chance to determine their own future. Maya's eyes found the Vectari delegate, who inclined its head in acknowledgement. The Dominion thought they were granting us time to accept our fate. Instead, they gave us time to become something greater than we had ever been. They thought they were dealing with primitives who would kneel before superior force. Instead, they awakened a species that had spent its entire existence refusing to surrender, refusing to die, refusing to accept any limitation on what we could become. She straightened, her voice ringing through the hall. Let this anniversary serve as a reminder. not of human strength, but of what all species can achieve when they are pushed beyond their limits. The Vectari were not wrong to see potential in humanity. They were wrong to think they could control it. That potential exists in every species, every individual, every being that looks at the stars and wonders what might be possible. Maya raised her glass, and across the hall, thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds did the same. To the future we build together, to the alliance that emerged from the ashes of conflict, and to the simple truth that no species, no matter how powerful, can ever truly predict what another is capable of, when given the time and the reason to prove themselves. The toast echoed through the hall, through the station, out into a galaxy that had been transformed by a species that had refused to accept extinction. A species that had been given 10 years of peace and had used every moment to prepare for a future beyond anyone's imagination. A species that had been told to kneel and had chosen, instead, to rise.